Welcome to Deadbolt Live. If you're here with us now, congratulations. You made a great life choice. Thank you for being here live. The chat is open, so fire away with any questions you have for our guest, or for me, or for whoever, or for yourself. I don't care. If you're listening to the recording, you're missing out. Live is where the magic happens. We do this every Tuesday from 4 to 5 p.m. Central Time. So mark your calendar, set an alarm, train your dogs to remind you, whatever it takes to get here live, do it. Little message from our sponsor. Deadbolt Society is proudly sponsored by Bowman Vision Media, offering high voltage marketing for low voltage companies. From social media to video to digital advertising, Bowman Vision Media has your back. Check them out at bowmanvisionmedia.com or swing by our Deadbolt sponsor space for more details. And all right, that's enough of that. We got our awesome guest here, Baer Halvorson. Hopefully I said that correctly. I don't think I've ever said your last name before out loud.
You can just say Uncle Baer. That's fine.
Uncle Baer is here. All right, let's pass it off to you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your career, what got you into the security field, and what got you here to where you are now?
Yeah, definitely. So I've gone over this a couple of times on other podcasts of Deadbolt members like Josh and his podcast 49 Volts and stuff. But I started in locksmithing. I needed a career, and it hit me like a ton of bricks in a Target parking lot, walking in thinking, what should I do with my life? And got into locksmithing and did that for 3 to 4 years. Including running my own company for a couple years there. And that's when I got into electronic security. And then I pulled wire. I got into attics. I did AV. I did physical security, Berg, nurse call systems, kind of just like low voltage contracting across the sphere. And then got into a little bit of datacom too. And it was all I was just soaking it in, man. I was just like, let me learn whatever I wanted. I was annoying people I worked with because I wanted to do jobs that they didn't. And it would kind of just hit like a wave. But then I actually got the opportunity to live in Montana for a couple of years, doing a high-end AV and Berg. And then now I'm a physical security engineer for the last probably, and Montana was in between it. I was doing physical security engineering, and then I went to Montana and came back still doing it for 4 or 5 years. So it's been well over a decade, and I love what I do. I have a passion for it. And I'm the host of the Security Today podcast. So I like to collect information and give it out via the podcast. And then I'm sure I saw it on the agenda, but I also have an educational platform called Black Picket Fence. And I try to curate that, so that's kind of in the works as well. But that's a little breakdown, the hot facts of Baer.
Yeah, that's cool. What brought you into the podcasting world from just being a integrator, technician, locksmith? What made you want to dive into the podcasting world?
Yeah, so I was working for a national integrator we did installs, but it was mainly service, and I was their Kansas City technician. So I ran like pretty much all of Kansas. I would go out to the Colorado border, and then I would run pretty much all of Missouri to like down to Springfield, out to St. Louis. And when COVID hit, they didn't have right in the 3-hour radius of Kansas City, they had not a big handful, but it was a lot of office clients. And so everybody left office, and there was kind of like nothing really to do in Kansas City. But there was a couple technicians up in Omaha, and they had some manufacturing clients that were considered essential. And so they stayed open, and they were running and gunning, so they needed help. So I was driving 3 days a week. I would wake up at 4 a.m., kind of get ready, get on the road, and I would be back home at 8 p.m. I would drive up to Omaha. It's about a 3-hour drive, and I would work with them all day, and then I'd come home. So that put like 18 hours a week on the road. And Drake could only get me so far. before I was like, man, I need something. So I started looking for like any podcast, and cybersecurity podcasts, man, they were dime a dozen. Like you could flip a rock and find one. But when it came to physical security, there was one that I found that As Is was putting out. The guy doesn't do it anymore, that he's passed the torch, but it was like their security highlights. It was once a month, and so I was itching for that to come out every month, but there was nothing other than that. So I said, you know what, I'm going to start a podcast, and I got all the magazines, right? SSI and the other publications, SDM and stuff like that. So I had all of it in front of me, and I was like, I'm just going to put it together so that the next guy driving would be able to listen and, pick up those 10,000 hours to become that master. And soon enough, it kind of folded into the company that I was working for, Sprinter out of Wisconsin. The guy who runs that was progressive in thought, and he was like, look, I'll give you a couple hours to do it if you tag my name at the front of it. And I was like, yeah, deal. And that's when the interviews started happening. I had a couple, so I created a couple series within the Security Today podcast. One's called Bid to Bank. I sit down with people, security integrators that own companies, and we run through the bid to the bank. What do they do for marketing? What do they do for project management? How do they handle customer experience? And we just go through it. And then I had the security, the room where it happens, which is like a higher end, kind of higher level security professionals. I sit down and I get their take on what they did and in their to get into security, and then what they think security is going towards. And then I also have the security dojo, which is kind of like just set up here. I was recording the other day. I have like a camera up here, and I'm just doing things and bringing that stuff. So it really evolved in 2024 and a little bit before in like the fall of 23. And so now it's rolling, man, but I love it. I really do.
Yeah, I like how you had them broken out like that. A lot of value in that bid to bank, especially if you are an aspiring or already a business owner of your own trying to get that integration business off the ground. It was huge value to be able to see what other people are doing and their struggles, and then the room where it happens. I feel like that's the first time I heard about Lee Odess, because you had him on there, right?
Yeah.
Then I looked him up. I'm like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about for sure. But yeah,
he's a big player. He was still like his access control executive brief wasn't as full steam as it is today, because that was back in 23. But he was still like really well known, and I just reached out to him on LinkedIn. I was like, hey man, would you ever consider coming on my podcast? And he's like, yeah, sure. He's like
really cool. Yeah,
he's a super chill guy. He's just like, yeah, all right, cool, let's do it.
Here, book a time on my calendar.
Yeah.
No, he's awesome.
That was awesome.
So, your podcasting journey started because you were trying to find something, and you figured if not them, then I should do it, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's really cool. You were the first security podcast I listened to.
Awesome. Great to
I didn't
hear.
really know about the other ones, but yeah, you got me hooked. And then it seemed like once I started listening to yours, others started popping up, and I don't know if they were already existing, but I just started noticing them more. But now I got a whole list of podcasts to listen to, and I run through those. But I do feel the pain of those long drives. I don't know if anybody on the chat or live knows, but I started my career in Southern California, and so a lot of traffic. If you know LA traffic, a lot of hours spent driving, and so that would have been great to have. But yeah, I feel the pain on that one. And so you also mentioned earlier that you have a educational branch called Black Picket Fence. Do you want to kind of dig into what that is, what that's all about?
Yeah, I do. So it's called Black Picket Fence, and you can go to Black Picket Fence. I believe it's online.com. No, not that. I think you have to type in www, because I'm doing it through an educational platform where I get to just upload my stuff. And
I
then
have that problem with Deadbolt too, where
yeah.
you don't put the www, and then it's like, oh, this website doesn't exist.
Yeah. So blackpicketfenceonline.com. I saw, being from the integrator technician perspective for so many years, I was blessed with a bunch of different companies giving me education. And I say blessed as in the education wasn't always great, but I got to see such a swath of education that I could kind of get a read on the industry and for like what it was doing. And the education pillar in our industry, man, it's rough. It's rough right now.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily rough for the lack of trying. There are people who are really trying to get good information out, but because of the way that our industry is set up, you kind of come down to these three pillars of, you get manufacturer education, which is like PDK runs classes that they teach access control based on their platform. You get organizational education like As Is or SIA, giving out certifications and those sorts of things. And then the last branch that is pretty dried up in our industry for sure is the independent education. People putting out education because they have the experience and the wherewithal, and they're trying to provide that to the industry around them. You'll see that in some you'll see it in some niches of locksmithing. You'll see it in some niches of other industries like podcasters, for instance. I'm sure you've gotten plenty of like, hey, join my course and I'll teach you how to podcast. So that's pretty popular right now, but it's not popular in our industry. So one thing that I wanted to do was, and it's a slow grow idea. I plan to add more over time and let it become something, but it's nothing that I'm like pouring every single night into. But black picket fence is the idea that it's the fence behind the white picket fence, which is our dream, that we create. And so I wanted to provide education to the physical security industry that would just help the technician for little cost. So right now I have a couple of brochures like PDFs on there with educational material that are free, including the TikTok webinar that I did. And then I also have a course for like, I don't know, it's cheap. It's like $199 or $149 or something like that, that goes over access control wiring. And it starts from the panel and it teaches the basic concepts of relay logic, how mags and strikes are wired up, how you use things to integrate into systems via wiring, not via software. And so, that's been something that I've been passionate about, because I feel like there's a lack of education in our industry, and that lack of education oftentimes just gets dismissed as like, well, look at this lunatic who hung this can and he hung it like this or that like that or whatever. So I try to push the education side of it more so. So yeah, that's kind of where that birthed out of.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see very many people trying to do what you do. Like Patrick in the chat, he's saying there's definitely a lack of education. It also starts at the tech school level. Not enough schools teach low voltage. That is true. I know in my career, I started with the union shop, electrician shop, and they actually did do low voltage. And the security company that I worked for pushed to have security taught in their low voltage class. And so at least in the IBEW 569, that's being taught. So that's cool, but we definitely need more. And I know even in Texas, they have these high school things where you can really get into a trade. Basically, by the time you graduate, you're ready for your journeyman course. And so somehow getting security or any kind of low voltage in there would be cool, because right now it's just like construction, carpentry, and plumbing, electrician. So yeah, I don't know how we can get it mainstream like that, but it would be really cool. And obviously baby steps like what you're taking. For some reason, I was just thinking about this the other day, cybersecurity, they have exploded with, promotion of, hey, this is how much you can make. Hey, come take our course. Colleges are doing courses for cybersecurity. Obviously, it's a little bit easier because it's, physical security is more hands-on training, and cyber is, you can do that over, the webcam or whatever. And so it definitely needs to get better. I agree, and I think Deadbolt Society is going to want to be a platform for that too in the future, for some training like that. Just trying to make it better for people to move up in their career. And so that's that the chat's going, and I'm not sure if there's any questions or if they're just chatting away.
No, they're doing. I'm reading it right now. I love it. They're adding to the conversation. Yeah, I think that the work that usually ends up on Chad Cooper's LinkedIn. Yeah, you're not wrong.
We were just talking. We just talked to Chad Cooper last week. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I was pushing him. I was like, "Come on, give me some answers." Yeah, for sure.
All right. Let's see. We have another topic here. Sorry, I was reading the chat, so it got me off guard.
Oh, but yeah, I know. They're drawing us in.
What do you think the future of security looks like from a technology side? Like, I would say, I know you've been asked this question a few times in other podcasts, but what would you say the 5-year, 10-year would look like with security?
I think it's a good question to keep asking, because I think it's changed just in the year and a half that I started asking that question on my podcast and started getting asked that question of like, where is security going? What is it doing? And it's, I would say in our industry alone, just from a physical security standpoint, technology in and of itself is like unpredictable, bro. It's like the jaguar's eyes in the dark forest line. You know what I'm saying? You're like, you don't know. Can I cuss on this? Is that cool?
I would rather you not.
Okay. No, that's perfectly fine. That's exactly why I wanted to ask. So it's like the jaguar's eyes. That you don't know what's going to happen. Like, it's about to jump out. You know what I'm saying? And when it does, it's go time, right? You got to to assess the situation. And so I feel like that's where we're at in security, because of things, like Charles is saying, quantum processing, AI, the user experience at the door is a hot topic. Like, my experience with my access control system is kind of being driven from some outside forces, leveraging it from like bigger players like Amazon and stuff like that are kind of teasing with the idea of getting in these little niche markets of physical security. And so it's driving this question of like, how do I interact with my system? And so with all of that coming together, it's like it's like all coming down roads to this like central point where it's going to just take off,
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody really knows exactly what it looks like. There's some people who think they have a good hold on it, but they also think they have a good hold on other things that didn't pan out that way or something. You know what I'm saying? So, but I love the passion behind it, because people will be like, this is where it's going. We're getting rid of the card reader. That's going to be the thing. And then like they get some role at a manufacturer, and then all of a sudden there's, the Trivium line of like, this is getting rid of the card. And then it's like, well, we can keep the card reader. Oh, okay, we could keep it.
No, I do like what Charles is putting in the chat, because that came up in the news last week, I believe. Microsoft coming out with that Madrino 1 or something chip, the quantum processor.
Yeah, dude,
we're gonna have to Madrona. We're gonna have to step up the security if that's going to be starting to come out in the market. How can we protect against something like that, or how can we use it as something that can help us with security? And then Patrick mentioned industry is heading to more of as a service model and as a managed service model, which I can agree with especially with the cloud stuff coming strong.
It's kind of been heading that way for a while. That as a service, anything. I think one thing that's going to really help it from the AI perspective, a lot of people love to say it, see and say AI in their
Right.
marketing or when they're on the ISC floor, which is coming down the pipe. And I'm curious this year
Yeah,
to how many people.
if you want to play a fun game, go to those booths and say, "What
Yeah,
is
yeah,
AI?" and just see what.
yeah,
I think I'm gonna go around with a camera and say, "What's AI to you?"
yeah,
All those
yeah.
booths.
That's
Yeah.
that dude. That's a brilliant idea. But they love to say it. But I think where AI is really going to change the landscape of what we see is the AI that will be the bridge between whatever system is trying to integrate with whatever other system. So
Mhm.
whether that's your access control with your visitor management or with your HR department software, or whether with your video surveillance or this or that or the other. I know that you had Chad on here last week and he was talking about Verkada that's trying to like put that into a single environment, into a single pane of glass. But I really think what's going to take off is the AI that will sit in between when you're using, a different access control system from your video surveillance and from your intrusion and from, anything, Microsoft Teams and your intercom and whatever it be. There will be something that will make all of those talk the same language. Kind of like, what's it called that came out in AV, and it was a protocol or a standard that like allows Dante. Yeah. And
Oh
so,
yeah, Dante. Yeah.
yeah. And so like there'll be something that sits in there, and those Groom brothers, the Groom brothers who create Rex.ai, they're working on something that you can like talk to via like normal language. And so I could be like, hey, this is our new person. Here's a picture of them. Make sure that they get, this level of security clearance in our systems and this and that and the other. And then anything that they have to interact with, the AI will just go do it in your video surveillance,
Yeah.
your intrusion, this, or that, and that.
Is
And
that
so,
is that kind of similar to what Highland Technologies is doing? I saw
um, so
Josh's podcast.
yeah, I watched some of that too. And I think that's more like if you need to interact with your system, like if you need a person to interact with your system, he can create that agent,
Mhm.
and that agent can interact with it. Whereas the Rex AI is kind of like the computer middleman that is still the computer. That's not necessarily a role that I would hire for.
Right.
So I could see both of those working in tandem even.
That's a
Um,
good point, though. I didn't even think about that. Having something that kind of brings everything together and in an AI format to where like a Chat GPT esque
yeah,
platform
yeah,
to where you can upload users or add users or say, hey, watch out for this guy or
right.
yeah, that's pretty cool. That's a
And
good
you know
idea.
what? This is what I want to see. Let me tell you what I want to see. So there's a bunch of things coming, but what I want to see is specifically to what you and I do in security design. I think that, and that's some of the education point too, is like I think that our industry lacks a lot of education around the design. Now you have higher end white collar and organizational education from like ASIS and SIA, where you can learn septet and you can learn defense in depth and you can learn these things
Yeah.
that kind of started out from a military concept or from like a criminological higher level education concept and trickled
Mhm.
their way down into these formats that we can learn, but that is still pretty high level. So where we don't have it is like the security engineer who worked his way into the engineer role, and he doesn't have access to that training. And I feel like AI could come in and really assist in the training of it if we had more structure around the education of the security design and security theory. And so then
Yeah.
you like plug it into this, because you know what I thought is that when President Trump, the attempted assassination, whatever your beliefs on that are, or however sketchy it was, I took a picture from Google Maps of the area, and I actually sent it into ChatGPT, and I was like, hey, give me a synopsis of this area and what are the key components and the listed in criticality order, that you would do to secure a site like this for someone who is presenting to 500 people, you know? And
Mhm.
so, and then it can pump out, like, put things here, put this there. I would make sure that this area was secure, more secure than this area. And I feel like we could use that in engineering.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there are scripts being written with Revit. I forget the platform's name. I keep wanting to say Dante now that that's in the chat, but it's not Dante. But there is a Revit like plugin that you can write scripts to do that, to where here's my plans. This is, I want card readers at every door, and just get that basic design at least out of the way. It doesn't have any AI component to it though. You kind of have to physically tell it to do stuff. But if that
Right.
kind of turned into an AI platform where it kind of had the basis, you download the knowledge of septed and all the other PSP study guides, and then it kind of built out a preliminary layout. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I'd be down for that. I mean, that's kind of working myself out of a job, so I better create it, or I'm gonna be the one at the door.
Right.
But
Right. No, yeah, get the money for creating it instead. Yeah. Charles put on the chat earlier that he is a security consultant. As a security consultant, he is offering CAAS, consultant as a service, pricing engagement model. That's interesting. So I don't know if you want to keep in the chat. Charles, can you explain a little bit what that looks like on your side, and we can touch back on that one. But I want to also talk to you, Baer, the kind of, it seems like what we're doing with Deadbolt for security, Technology Worldwide is doing for low voltage, if I'm not mistaken. They're kind of a not for profit community. You want to tell the the audience of what that's all about?
yeah, I would love to. So, Technology Worldwide is a non-for-profit organization that it's about 3 years old, I think, and they are a organization that is free to join into their Slack community, and then they have a bunch of obviously channels that you can get into, and it's just this community that stretches beyond like what your local low voltage guys that would be. And they are at, let me type it into the chat, techknowledge.org is where they're located. And they kind of push this. Okay, so it started about 3 years ago, and I was there when it started. It was about 4 or 5 guys who wanted to create a community that was uplifting, that was encouraging, and that was resourceful as a low voltage technician, because we all know the ungodly Facebook drone on of don't ever post a photo of your work on Facebook. I mean, you're bound to be like cut and slashed. You know what I'm saying? So they were looking for this alternative, and when they created it around principles, and like one of them is like community over competition. And so it's this idea that it's open, that you share information, that you use each other. And there are guys in there, they will post like, hey, I've got a job in Arizona and I need 6 guys to come down and, take care of this for me. And guys will come from Pennsylvania and Canada and like, California and stuff. And they'll all come together and help each other get stuff done. And then if you, like, I've had questions like, have you ever heard of this intercom? Like, can it integrate with this? And I'll have dudes send me screenshots and be like, yeah, it's right here in the software and stuff like that. And so it's a special
Nice.
community. Yeah, they do 2 events a year. The first event is in the spring called Tech Fest, and it's kind of their educational conference, vendor conference that they get together. It's in Nashville this year. I'm a keynote speaker on security design,
Yeah.
hardening a site. Yeah, so I'll be being able to get up there and talk about security design and security theory. But they also have like marketing and low voltage. They have Chuck Bowser coming to talk about bonding and grounding through his Bixie course. He's a big Bixie guy. They have low voltage network keynote speakers, and then they have all sorts of people like PDK, Alta Labs, cable and connections, Eaton. Like, they really bring it together, and it's a really cool event. And then they have an event in the fall every year that is a giving back. And so this is where Tech Knowledge Worldwide kind of changes into something that I've never seen. And they are a nonprofit that has like changed, they've flipped the script and they've created an entire new philanthropy. And the way that they've done it is they, through their advisory board, every year they pick somewhere around the country, usually from one of their members, bringing it and saying, hey, this is who I think we should donate our text giving, is what they call it, to this year. And then it is a full-scale donation to like Spanish speaking preschools or churches, or they did a Baltimore gym called Mission Fit that takes inner city kids and gives them a space to come into and kind of work out and have a hobby that isn't out there ruining their future, but it's strengthening it. And so they'll come in and they'll just do a tech overhaul. They'll do networking, they'll do wireless, they'll do physical security, and they'll do video surveillance. And all of it's donated. The guys donate their time. They fly in and spend 3 or 4 days putting it all together. And so it's like nothing I've ever seen, man. It's pretty
awesome.
freaking cool. Yeah.
Right
so
on.
I would highly look into joining, just being a member of it, and then donating. You can donate, and you can go to techfest.org and you can sign up. And if you use TKWSTP for Tech Knowledge Worldwide and Security Today podcast, TKWSTP at checkout, you get half off tickets this year in Nashville.
Nice.
So yeah, check that out, man, for sure.
What are you going to be speaking about? Well, I guess you said what you're going to be speaking about, but you want to go into a little bit more depth on topics that you're going to speak about?
I'd love to. So I'm doing a keynote speaking on like lesson. I don't know what to call it. I'm like, I keep going, is it a class? Is it a talk? Is it this or is it that? But it's called Security Theory 101, Using Design to Harden a Site. And it'll be the first day on Wednesday at 11. I have an introduction where I'll talk about kind of the purpose of security. Security is a mindset, something that I call like the left of bang and the corner of security. And so I'll use kind of that to frame us around the idea that when we come into a site and we start to design security and we start to implement security theory onto it, it has to start with a mindset. And I think that's what a lot of guys just skip, and then that's why they never get a good design out, is because they come in and go, well, it needs alarm, so I'm going to put alarm on it.
Right.
Every door gets a door contact. Here's some windows. I'll put a glass break over there. And I mean, I guess there'll be a lot of people right here, so we'll put a motion. And then bam, they have this thing. But sometimes you have these gaps in the design, or it's over-designed, and it just isn't good. It isn't good for the system. It isn't good for the client. So you have to start with that mindset that you have to get into. And then we'll go over what a risk assessment is. I think that this is one thing that, okay, so man, our industry is complex and there's so many nuances to it. But one of the things in our industry that people are working on over at the Secure Building Council, like Paula Balmori, Vinny, he's in here. He's on it. Phil, what's his last name? Capella? How do you say it? With HID?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Copala. The Secure Building Council is trying to create a cert, like a certification or a standard that you can stamp on architectural and engineered prints to say that it's up to a standard of security.
Right.
And so,
like a shield level, right? Shield 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. And so one of the things that comes with that is usually a threat or a risk assessment. And I feel like there's a big space for smaller integrators, and by smaller, I just mean not like national or enterprise level, that they can be offering threat and risk assessments, sometimes in a light version for free, or even offering it to the customer for money that they can come in if they know how to conduct a risk assessment and SEPTED assessments 100%, and
Yeah.
use that to kind of drive the customer into the security system that they're going to design. So security as a mindset goes both ways. And so you want to be building security in your customer's mind, because you can have it locked down to Fort Knox and
Right.
have every, shiny little, gold security device on the site. But if that customer leaves their site and still feels unsecure or still feels afraid or worried, then we haven't gone the extra mile. We haven't gone the last mile to make sure that they are getting out of the security system what they deserve out of their security system. And so being able to give a risk assessment is starting to tell this like longer story of security in this person's business or in this person's life. And that allows them not only to feel justified in spending the money that it takes to get physical security, but also come out of the entire experience with security as a mindset that they used you, and that they're building, and their work is secure. I told Josh on his 49 volts, I think it was, I talked about, it was either that or I did a podcast for KCBC also, and I talked about this concept of keeping Christmases. And it's the idea that if I can secure this site, I might not be securing it from a school shooter, or I might not be securing it from like the worst of the worst things that could happen to it. But if there's even one security incident and it puts downtime in your manufacturing, or it makes it so that the work has to be held so that you can do your business continuity plan or something like that, you might miss a paycheck on somebody. And if you miss that paycheck, that might have been food on their table. That might have been soccer, practice. That might have been a Christmas. And so the idea is that when we put security in, sometimes it's hard for guys to think like, oh yeah, man, I'm Superman. I'm in physical security, because they're like, oh, it's whatever. Like you screw in a door contact and it's like it feels very minimal in the reality of the world for how big of difference it's making. But it's keeping Christmases, man. You're like really keeping people's lives in check. And so that's why we have to see our role in our industry as something as important as the doctors and the policemen and the first responders, because they are responding to right of bang and we are responding to left of bang. We're just making sure that when that event happens, we do something to delay it or deter it or cause it to be mitigated in damages that could be done in that event. And so that's all stuff that we'll go through. So I'll talk about that. I'll talk about defense in depth and how to apply that to design. I'll talk about SEPTED, and then basic design principles for cameras and for access control and for motion detectors and how to use them, and how we secure zones, we don't secure doors, and choke points and all that other stuff. So yeah, we're gonna get into it real hot and heavy.
Well, that sounds like a great class or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And then Charles mentioned he got back to us on the consultant as a service. He basically doesn't do a not one and done, but rather a recurring ongoing pricing model that provides the customer with an opportunity to continually engage with a consultant / SME who is like an attorney on retainer. I think that's a great way to build out a consulting firm, because people would love to have that kind of access to a consultant just to, shoot ideas off, or hey, we don't need a full-time guy. We just need somebody, on retainer that we can do projects with. So Charles, we'll have to dig into that when you are a guest on here in April. So I look forward to talking about that. So you took a break from the podcasting for a little bit. The first quarter of this year, right? You're still on a break technically right now. I wanted to reference Friends. I didn't know how that was going to work in, but you are on a break.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to elaborate a little bit why? Because I know you got some stuff working on in the background. Let the audience know what you got going on.
Yeah, so I'm spinning a lot of plates, probably too many, and I'm trying to decide, what needs to stay and what doesn't. But as I came into the year, I was like, you know what, I need to set the podcast down for just a minute because I got to kind of get my head straight on what I'm doing. One of the things that I've got some ideas and some visions of the future that to complete will mean that I'm not working as a W-2, but am working as somebody who owns their own business, but not just one business, multiple businesses, and kind of like in that holding company path to get to. So that's with that in the future, I needed a little time to kind of sit down and work on the empire a little bit. And the first kind of phase of that is a side hustle that is an LLC. So it's not just like a side hustle, it's a side business to what I'm doing in automotive key programming. When I started out as a locksmith, I was trained in automotive keys and automotive locksmithing. That was one thing that the locksmith that I was working for did. And so I kind of came with that base level of knowledge. And it's always been something of interest to me because I like cars and I like technology and I like kind of looking like a wizard. You can make the key to the car. That feels powerful, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I was able to acquire a couple of machines, a couple key cutters and programmers and stuff like that. And that's kind of one of the goals by the end of the year, to have that up and running to a certain metric. And so that's what I've been spending my time on. It's called KC Auto Key, kcautokey.com. And I've got a Instagram page that I would love for you to follow at KC Auto Key. That would always help. So that's kind of and that's with my wife. We're both doing that together. So I needed the help if I was still to be employed and still to have a podcast and still to have a teaching platform. Like, I need to slow down, I think.
Yeah. No, I feel that pain, especially trying to keep deadbolts, at the front and center of everything while still doing a full-time job. And and then now kids are in sports and my son's in baseball. That's why I had to move these to Tuesday nights now, because Thursday nights are baseball night. So I feel that.
Yeah. Well, it's honorable, man, that you move it, because some guys wouldn't, you know what I'm saying? But you got to keep the priorities at the level that they need to be kept at. And that's one thing that I feel like you and, a couple other the guys in here and a couple of guys that I'm close to in the security industry do a really good job at, is just making sure that the priority's family. Like, we're doing this to secure the world, yes,
right.
But I want to provide for my family before I secure the world. Those are mutually not exclusive. I can do both, but you got to keep the family kind of as the priority.
Yeah. My 9 to 5 is for Exante, and my 5 to 9 is for Deadbolt. That's how I kind of phrase it. What's your 5 to 9? What are you doing it for?
Yeah, exactly.
And Charles wants to know, where'd your name Baer come from?
Yeah, excellent question. So I was probably about seven or 8 years ago. My nieces and nephews were all like 2 and 3, right? Like, I had a bunch of nieces and nephews from my wife's side, and I am a little bit expressive, right? Especially when it comes to kids, because you can like kind of be a fool and they don't judge you. And so I was like chasing them around the house. Like, every time we got together, I was out there in the yard, chasing them around, playing with them and stuff like that. And I kind of was like known as the fun uncle, right? But my sister-in-law started like referring to me to her kids as like Uncle Bear, because he would like chase you around. And so my heritage is pretty heavy Scandinavian, Norwegian, Swedish. I got a lot of people that came over from there. And so I spelled it Baer. I got on Instagram. I was like, I need a name, right? I need a handle. So I was like, @Uncle Bear. And then it wasn't before too long that like people were, referring to me as Bear because my career kind of like started to grow. And it was like, hey,
Yeah.
Bear. No, it's not my official name. It's not. But yeah, that's what I go by now. So
So what's your name now?
Bear. My name's Bear. Yeah.
I don't know, Charles, if he's going to say it on here. Do you want to type it in the
Yeah,
chat
yeah.
for whoever's here? Or
No. It's called operational security,
yeah, there you go.
Keep that locked. So I like having a nickname for sure.
Right on. You also wrote a pretty cool article a few weeks ago or last month or so. Was it for your company that you work for now? It was just kind of something you were working
Yeah.
on.
So my full time is with Kenton Brothers Security Systems out of Kansas City. They've been a security. Well, they've been started as a locksmith in like 1897 with two brothers, and
Wow.
it's been generationally owned since then. So the woman who owns it now is named Gina, and she, yeah. So I've been working there for a while, and they have a blog, and so they asked me to start writing for it, and I was like, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So your article about hardware bloat was pretty cool. I know I've seen a lot of that happen. Do you want to kind of reference what you wrote in there, and why is hardware bloat a bad thing?
Yeah, definitely. So as an engineer, I oftentimes get a lot of photos from the sales guy who walked it, right? And we also do a large variety of work. So we do small businesses, we do large businesses, we do federal. So we kind of span the whole gamut. And then sometimes you'll get these like old places that are having problems with their security system, so they came to you. And the pictures that I get back, which you can see like Kenton Brothers .com is where I think it's at. You can see in that blog, like I got a door that had a mag and it had a strike, and it was like like an Adams right dead latch was the operating lock, but it also had a touch sense panic and like two door cords, and it was just like, what am I looking at, And
Yeah.
so they were asking for ideas to write on. And I know that a lot of times you come into these spaces that kind of have been around for a long time. Maybe they've changed hands or changed tenants and or changed security system providers, and you get what's kind of considered as hardware bloat, where a lot of security devices that maybe needed to be decommissioned or aren't used anymore are still on the doors. They're still in the IT room. They're still
Mhm.
the wire is still in the ceiling. And so one thing that can have an effect on is in servicing and in managing the system. You can provide confusion. You can weaken doors and frames because you leave stuff in or you don't repair where you need to. And so that is one area that I feel as a security system provider, as an integrator or an engineer, you need to be looking out for. And you need to be
Yeah.
filling those holes. You need to be taking the stuff off, decommissioning devices that shouldn't be on the door or shouldn't be out in the field anymore, because
Mhm.
that can cause a lot of things, but it can cause like delay in time trying to figure something out, and that could mean that the security system is down too long, and now the event has happened,
Or
right?
sometimes false security too. If somebody sees a door contact on a door and they think, oh, it's got a door contact, I'm secure, but it
Yeah.
could be not even going anywhere currently or wired, um, or somebody comes later on and says, oh, that door already has a contact, I don't need to add one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that too. And for sure, it also plays a part in like the aesthetic of the space.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
think that that's a really important part. And I know that like the architects would cheer, and like the warehouse managers would be like, you're an idiot, like who cares what it looks like? It needs to work. And so like there's
Yeah.
a span there, but yeah, it's really important. And the aesthetic matters, it matters how you feel in your space. And so if you're looking at a door and it looks like this chunky mess of just anything and everything, then
Yeah.
ugh, how do you
Yeah.
work in that?
Yeah. I've seen doors with two giant surface mounted mag or door contacts that are ginormous, and holes all in the fire rated door that shouldn't be there.
Yeah,
That's another
yeah.
thing that people don't pay attention to, I think, enough, is fire rating. And
Yes,
there's rules for
100%.
that.
Yeah, we were actually talking about that this week in engineering because someone was like, "Yeah, I spec this," and I was like, "Was it a fire door?" He was like,
Hmm.
"I don't know." And I'm like, "Well, you better know, bro. If you're gonna
Right.
pour that door, you better know if it's fire rated." Because
Hmm.
the problem with this is like it feels so minimal at the moment. It's like it's just a door. I'm putting like this big a hole all the way through it, and it's electrified. It doesn't really matter. But the minute that burns through and the top half falls down and it just cakes that room with smoke and flame,
Right.
you could be killing people at that point,
Hmm. Well,
and
like
so
like you said about saving Christmases, it all
yeah,
boils down to even a small little hole like that.
right, 100%. So yeah, fire rating. And see, the problem here is there's not a ton of education around that in
Hmm.
our industry specifically. You can go into the fire industry, you can go into life safety, you can go into the surrounding areas that you have to talk with and have to play with as an engineer, as a tech, as a project manager. But specifically in our industry, there's not a lot of places that you can go to and learn this. And the problem is that people don't understand how complicated access control is. They just think, oh, I'm putting security on a door.
Yeah, it's
But
it's magical that we could just make it
yeah,
work.
yeah, but you have to be a carpenter, you have to be an electrician, you have to be a low volt specialist, you have to know relay logic, you have to understand software and networking. And like,
Hmm.
so you're playing this role that really needs education, right? To get there, to get
Yeah.
to all those 5 areas. And unfortunately, right now, where most of the guys are learning at is on, things like this. Like, oh, I didn't know you couldn't core a fire rated door. Might be something someone thinks from this podcast, which is excellent because now they
Yeah.
go find out. But I wish that there was a place that they could go and drink from that well and not have to learn it because they're listening to the Security Today podcast, or not have to learn
Yeah.
it because, so it is important.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, Black Picket Fence or Deadbolt Society can be one of the many resources in the future for that kind of thing. I know we both have the same kind of mindset of, training and getting information out there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
and
And
Charles
I
put
love
something in
being
the
part
chat.
of Deadbolt,
Right.
and I think that that'll pan out.
Yeah. I mean, let's dig into that a little bit more. You know, we're kind of, you know, we met, I reached out to you on LinkedIn. I said, hey, I'm starting a thing. Um,
Oh yeah,
and,
that was a while back.
you had your today podcast already going. I was listening. I was really liking it. I'm like, hey man, I'm going to start this thing. Um, you know, I don't want to be like stepping on toes or anything. And, I just wanted to reach out and, I really wanted you to be on board. And sure enough, we're here probably almost a year later. Um, and you're part of Deadbolt. You're one of our advisors. You're on the inner circle. What would you tell the podcast or the live chat here why you think Deadbolt is a cool place for security professionals, or maybe sell people who aren't quite on here yet?
Yeah, so you reached out to me, and I think originally it had a different form, and then you kind of like
Mm,
life was in front of you, and so it kind of got like molded around, and then which was
yeah,
good because I think it kind of went back into your oven, in your mind, and you cooked it
yeah,
like just right. And it came out to kind of what Deadbolt Society is now. And so I think that it is really important. One of the reasons that I do want to be an advisor and I do want to participate and be involved in it is because I think that there are a lot of avenues that you can find in physical security to kind of socialize and network. Obviously, LinkedIn, you can find Slack forums that you can get a part of. You can find these
hmm,
little text groups, and you can find Facebook groups and those sorts of things. There's like Reddit stuff that you can get into. But what Deadbolt is bringing that the others aren't is kind of this organic grassroots vibe that allows you to really pull value from the networking.
hmm,
And I know that like the people that are involved in Deadbolt already are people that I have networked with and I've been networking with, and it just is always good vibes, man. You don't get one guy or one woman that is like, I wish I'm avoiding their calls. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to talk to them anymore. And so Deadbolt has this vibe and this vibe around it, and it's really new. And
Yeah.
I think that that's really good because we know what the seed is that we're planting right now. Like,
Yeah.
we all have really good awareness of the people that are in it, kind of the goals that we're wanting to accomplish. First of all, using Mighty Networks is a big plus because you kind of get these channels of, 49 volts podcast and security and the security guys and stuff like that. And so I really think that it's something special, and I think that as it grows and as it blossoms, it'll be something that you can't get in LinkedIn because everybody's selling you something on that platform.
Right.
And you can't get in in Reddit or Facebook because it's just way too open. It's way too broad. And so it fits this niche that I really do believe that it's going to pan out. It's exactly why I'm here. So
Sweet. I appreciate it. Thanks for the kind words. And
yeah, man.
Charles, we are open to all age groups, not just the old folks, but you're welcome. We definitely, I'll just put this out here, kind of our vision for Deadbolt Society is to be a place, like Baer said, to have community, and eventually grow this into a platform that has training, that has, a product review section in it, to help, if you're kind of like going back and forth between a camera, hey, what are the pros and cons? We'll kind of build some of that out as well. And then, having some of the old folks in here, like you said, Charles, we also want to build out a mentoring section, and getting people who want to, pour into the next generation of security individuals. Because I know I would have loved to have that when I first started, and I'm sure Baer too. And so that's kind of our vision for Deadbolt, and we're growing it. And so make sure you guys get on here if you're not already. It's free to join, and please, post and make sure it's not just me posting all day. And I'd like to see some other people in there posting. So, but yeah, well, I appreciate you coming on here, Baer, and chatting with us for an hour. That's pretty much all we got going. I just wanted to promote next week's live stream. We're going to be with John Pauly from Protect Solutions. He's another guy who, Baer and I both follow and have talked to. Has he been on your podcast too? I believe he has.
I haven't got him on yet, but I definitely talked to him in the Access Control Executive Brief, and I've watched some stuff that he's done, and he's a powerhouse.
Oh, is John Pauly your partner, Charles? I didn't even know
That's
that.
Hilarious.
Nice.
Yeah, well, there it is.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So tune in next week. We're here every Tuesday. The only Tuesday that I might not be available is flying out to ISC. So we're going to try to think of, brainstorm something fun to do for that week. And so, yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for everybody for joining and for the live chat. And we'll talk to you next week. See ya.
See you guys.